On today's PMEA's Take Note podcast, we are talking with Joe Lamond, the President and CEO of NAMM. We'll talk about what NAMM is offering that is free next week and also a little bit later into the year, and talk a little bit about what NAMM is and what's happening there. It's all on today's PMEA's Take Note podcast, presented by the Slippery Rock University Music Department. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Mark Despidakis, and thanks for joining us on PMEA's Take Note podcast today. Joining us today is Joe Lamond. He is the President and CEO of NAMM. Been in that role, I believe, since 2001. We'll talk a little bit about that role and maybe what's next for him a little bit later. But there's a couple other pressing things we want to talk about. Joe, thanks for taking some time to talk to us today.
Hello, Mark. Great to see you.
It's great to have you. I've got the pleasure of knowing you for the past probably 15 or so years when I first made my entrance into the music products industry, and have watched you so skillfully lead NAMM over this time, and especially during the pandemic. So I really appreciate all the work that you have done over these years for the music industry, but also for music education.
Thank you, Mark. Well, as you know, we've all done this together, right? All of us, in service to our ultimate, goal of a more musical world. This has been our calling. I know it's been your calling since you were. I think I've known you longer than that. Actually, it was back in the market development days when I was at NAMM originally 23 years ago. You were just a young tyke then, but yeah, it's a passion. It's why someone comes into this. Either on the education side or in the more on the instrument side. This is it. This is our life. This is all we know. This is what we believe in, and this is what we want to leave as a legacy, that we might have made some differences in a school's life, a student's life, a family's life through music. That's what we do, and we're lucky. We're very lucky, even in spite of the challenges we're facing now, which are great, by the way. And I know you're experiencing them, and every one of your listeners has been through the ringer, but we're getting through it. But I keep focused on the end zone, which is we're making differences every single day. And when your members go into the classroom every single day, they're changing lives.
I remember many years ago you talked about it was at a NAMM show, and you said something like, we're so lucky that we get to work in music because we're working in our passion. Do you think that the folks who sell milk when they go to their conference is as exciting and as fun as what we get to do, and as passionate as what we get to do?
No, I've never been to a plumbing fixture conference. I imagine they're pretty happening. I'm not going to lie. I aspire someday to at least drive by one, but boy, you get a bunch of music industry people together, music educators together, students, artists, people from around the world, and you have got a energy and a collaborative spirit that defies, our earthly gravitational pull, in my opinion. But yeah, it comes back to collaboration. I think the idea that you look at this whole musical ecosystem that we are in, right? And there are no substitutes for each part of the ecosystem. Each one, almost like a natural the natural ecosystem, the small, the big, everything in between. You can't have the system without everybody doing their part. And that's why I feel so strongly about the collaborative spirit between the industry side, which I guess is the instrument and the services and all the things that the NAMM members bring to the table, and the education side, which is how do we bring this skill, this lifelong desire to learn and play music, which is the educator. There's no us and them, it's just us. And I think I've spent a lot of my life trying to enforce that collaboration, that we are actually all just one, and some chose a different path, but at the heart of it, we all are actually cut from the same cloth. We all have this passion for music. Most all of us are players. I have two drum sets on the other side of my screen here. But it's just the idea that working together collaboratively is the real answer and the real magic of an industry and an education community coming together in service to the student and the community. And that I know it sounds kind of hokey sometimes when you say it that way, but I just think that's just the way it is. I don't see how it could work any other way. I don't. So.
Yeah, I agree. I don't, because to your point, we're all in that same goal of more music makers and a more musical world. And kind of in that thought, right now in a normal year, if you will, I'd be packing my luggage to be on the way to Southern California for the NAMM show. And a very collaborative environment. And we'll talk about what that has become a little bit later, but there next week would have been the NAMM show week. And you're not, well, let's put it this way. You've moved the NAMM show. We'll talk about that in a second, but you're not giving up on January for this year in a sense. And you have a special event that is open to everyone, Believe in Music. Can you talk about that?
Well, last year was the initial Believe in Music event, virtual event. I mean, as musicians and artists, I mean, I firmly believe we are more in the physical world, in-person gathering in our truest nature. But thank God we've had these tools of the pandemic. I mean, Teams and Zoom and these platforms to be able to have these events. Thank God for them. And so we launched last year in lieu of the NAMM show, Believe in Music. And it was, really our first time out of the gate, creating an event for music educators, artists, our trade, people around the world that gathered around that online platform. We learned a lot. An old mentor used to tell me, you don't get to skip your first time doing anything. And we didn't get to skip our first time doing Believe. We learned a ton. 90-something thousand registrants from 178 or 180 countries. So we really did gather this community virtually when we couldn't do it physically. We're doing it again. We're going to do it next week. Believe in Music is happening again, but the difference is it's not replacing the NAMM show. It is the road to the NAMM show in June. So it has a different focus, but the core of it is the same. How can we unite people together, create some magic moments with interviews and live music, but also offer some great education for the different segments. So there's stuff for educators, policy, administrators, and then also, how to run a better music store, how to run a better rental program. And we've got live events, sessions on, how do you produce concerts or festivals in an era of COVID? How do you safely produce these events? Everything from obviously mitigation, but crowd control, all these things. So a wide range of education for all these different segments and all kind of held together with an anchor desk. That's sort of like the Olympic anchor desk, right? So you've got, the anchor desk saying, oh, we're going over to the long jump, or we're going over here. And so that's my role. And we'll be anchoring everything together and sending people off. Okay, we got that session over there now. You go off there and come back when you're done. Go over there. That's going to be next Thursday, 21st, I believe. And then we're going to offer a lot of that stuff on demand the next couple of days, and some surprises too. But the main difference is Believe this time is not taking the place of a NAMM show. It's actually leading up to the NAMM show, because when we get to June, where the NAMM show will be for one time only, it will have this virtual component on top of it. Everything we're seeing and doing with Believe is going to be on top of the NAMM show. So for those who can't attend, they'll have access to all these great events. Those who are attending physically will have this kind of superhero partner with them. Because of that platform, they'll be able to schedule meetups much easier. They'll be able to, see a session while they're walking to a physical appointment on the trade show floor. When they get back to the room that night, to be able to see the breakfast session they missed. So everything we're doing next week is a learning curve to be able to put a virtual event on top of a physical event, which I guess today is called a hybrid event.
Right.
We got to have words for everything these days. We got to have, these new terms, but that's, for us, it was an evolution to recognize that we had a responsibility to think more broadly around the world. Those who cannot come physically to the NAMM show in Southern California, we still wanted to bring them into the family. So next week will be Believe. It's free. Everyone should log on. It's registered. Just get in. And if you watch for an hour, and pick and choose what you want to tag to watch afterwards. Yeah, I would encourage everyone to just get on Believe. It's easy to log in, it's easy to register, and then that's also your registration for the June virtual event as well. So that's part of our organizational structure. We've learned that this is part of our IT system now. So everyone who logs in, gets a registration now, is automatically going to be part of the June show too. So super easy. Either go to NAMM.org or Believe Music and just log in. So.
And I think one of the really cool things about it is, as I look at the schedule of what these sessions are, there's sessions like for college students, but I think an educator would be interested in maybe listening into that panel. Yeah. There's these sessions about live shows you're talking about it and live entertainment and what is happening in that sector. Well, I'm not in that sector, but I'm be fascinated to listen in on that conversation. And I think that's an extra added bonus of doing something like this, especially with that on-demand component. And then, you at the Olympic anchoring desk too is cool, because there were surprises last year during that. And I guarantee that, you have more up your sleeve for this year, which will be fun.
And again, you hit on maybe the most important topic that I would share in this, our little time together today. We've stumbled on the most important part of what I think is human ingenuity and human development is collaborating. And that sometimes is that an idea can come from outside into a kind of closed loop and change everything. And whether it's happening virtually next week on Believe with these discussions and people watching these different sessions that they choose to just out of curiosity log into, or if it happens physically at the NAMM show floor, where you're walking through the show floor, or PMEA, your conference and your trade show floor within the conference, walking around, talking with different people from different walks of the industry or different parts of the education community. You have these discussions, and out of these discussions come new solutions for a classroom challenge that someone might be having, especially during the pandemic, new product ideas for even something that we might have, the industry side might say, that's something we've been thinking about making. You think you could use that in a classroom? Awesome. New services. How can we better, manage, communicating with parents on rentals or things like that? Use technology more for easing those pain points. That's collaboration that came probably out of just a random conversation. And more importantly, nowadays, I think we will be getting back to in-person events. It's coming. I think literally, I believe we are fighting the last COVID battle right now with Omicron. I don't know for sure. No one does. I wish we did, but I believe after studying history and pandemics, looking at all the medical evidence that's out there now, we are fighting the last battle. And what comes back is physical, in-person concerts, festivals, gatherings. People are yearning for that. But what I think about is how we will do them safely. What type of, I think there's an absolute inflationary trend, to borrow a current phrase, but in what we expect out of a live event: sound, lighting, video. I think the collaboration from the education community on what we are going to expect, whether it's a fourth grade first recital or a play in theater in schools, I think not only on the instrument side, on the service side, but as importantly, when we come back to physical events, what are we going to be looking for in this new expectation for great quality audio, great quality lighting, and great quality video in all these events? And I think that's part of the collaboration with the education community. What can we as an industry be working towards to help you solve these problems and to make sure that those in-person events and gatherings are worthy? If we come back and it just looks like a Zoom call or a Teams call, we might as well just keep doing Zoom calls. When we get back in physical, literally in-person events, we want to have that, that expectation of high quality. So anyway, instrument side, service side, but also more and more on the production side. I think that's a real interest to all of us, because it is, for some, new, for some it's been a part of their lives. I mean, obviously some of your members are very astute at what makes a great live performance, but for a lot of people, it's going to be a new thing. How do we do this? How do we do it safely? So the collaboration literally is where these things are born. And we as an industry, the members we represent, the Menchie Music, Robert Inside's Music, these great members of ours, we can't exist without this collaboration. And again, many of us have crossed from education to trade. You're a perfect example. You've walked back and forth in different parts of the industry. When we go to Washington and lobby for music education, or you go to your state house, you bring both educators and industry. We speak with one voice at that point, but the idea that chance encounter, that that random conversation in a hallway or on the show floor or at the conference that you have, that's where the real magic happens. And I think that's what's going to drive our next. I think we're going to be in a very innovative phase coming out of this. Every event in human history where we had these types of catastrophic events, pandemics, wars, what came after that was a period of real innovation, real leaps forwards in how we do things. And I think we need to do it together.
I don't want to belabor the point, but speaking of Menchie Music, I have one of our trade magazines, and Joel Menchie is because he's the current NAMM chair, is featured in here, but he quotes you in this article talking about how, we didn't realize when we left the NAMM show in 2020 that it was the end of an era. And yeah. I have to tell you, as I read that quote, and you talked about how, we're at this new phase, whether we like it or not, and we're moving forward.
Yeah.
And I read it and I felt both incredible sadness and incredible excitement.
Yeah.
Because I know that the NAMM show has been part of my life and has been part of the life for so many people. And just as every conference, a PMEA conference is part of people's lives. But what it becomes now is completely different. What an association is also becomes completely different. So I guess my question then to you is it sad or exciting, or is it both?
What I meant by that quote, and basically it was an essay I wrote to the industry, thinking about the close of the 2020 NAMM show, January, I can't remember the day, 19th or 20th of 2020, 5 p.m. Sunday, after a 4-day show, the largest show in NAMM's history, probably the most productive on so many levels around, membership around the world in the history of NAMM. And at 5 p.m. when the announcement came on saying, thank you for attending the 2020 NAMM show, we'll look forward to see, at that moment, there's that kind of relief, and everyone who's in show production knows that moment of, when the show's over, curtains closed. And I just wished I'd appreciated that moment more, because I didn't realize that was the end of an epic. And when I think about epics, I'm thinking like, this Earth's epics. We went from, the reptile era and dinosaur to mammals. I mean, somewhere there, this big thing changed, and you probably didn't know it while you're in the middle of the change. All of a sudden, things were different. And now in geology, you had millions of years to sort that out. We have had just a few short months of pandemic to really figure out where that goes. And using that analogy of Earth's changes and epics, the reality is, okay, yeah, we went through an epic of reptiles and dinosaurs to mammals. Well, we don't have dinosaurs anymore. They left. We still have mammals and we still have reptiles. They're just different. So what I meant was we entered a new era of how shows might look, or how industries might gather, or how people might gather, but we're still bringing along some of the traditions, and I think the transformation and tradition sitting side by side is where we're going with these. Your conferences will look different. How products are launched or come to market, or how they're designed and shared will change, but we will still keep some of the fundamental traditions. And that is, a student's going to want to learn an instrument. There's going to be someone that's going to have to teach them. It's going to be hard. They're going to have to dedicate the time and the rigor to become good. Some are going to get great at it and move on and make it their career. Others are going to just have that musical literacy that makes them great people in a democratic society. Someone who is able to work together in groups. They'll be wonderful in society. They'll, think through problems. They'll think about excellence in whatever they do in life. And that's going to be tradition carried forward. We're not going to lose that. So, but how we, how we operate, how we come together, all that, how our shows are going to look. We realize that an exhibitor may decide not to have just 100 guitars on the wall. It may be a content creation stage, and they may be using artists and some new models to create and share content around the world instantly. That may be a different way that they approach their exhibit. It may be more about collaboration and meetings. So we're trying to redesign the show. We're trying to redesign the type of offerings of a gathering like ours, but also understanding that tradition will come along with it. The example I used in this essay was, okay, Les Paul was a great inventor. Les Paul was a great artist. He and his wife, Mary Ford, were unbelievably, prolific in writing and creating new instruments. So Les Paul had this guitar that's shaped, named after him. It's a beautifully shaped guitar. It's a work of art. It is still one of the top sellers today. It was designed in the mid-50s, a guitar shape that is still one of the best sellers today. Traditionally, we love it. It's still one of the best sellers today. He also invented the rudimentary multi-track recorder. I mean, it was rudimentary. That 4-track recording technology has been improved a billion times over to what we have now on these or software programs for recording. So even take someone like Les Paul. He created something that we've improved and improved and improved on a million times. That's the transformation of our events and our gatherings in our world. He also invented this guitar that we still love. And traditionally, we want to bring that forward too. So we have to look at transformation and tradition and honor them both. And that's what I meant by changing eras and epics in this. We have to realize you don't want to be a dinosaur, right? They didn't make it. Those poor guys, just didn't make it. But a whole bunch of other reptiles figured out, hey, we're going over here now. These kind of warm-blooded guys, they're kind of hip. We're going to go with them and kind of see how we fit in. You don't want to be a dinosaur. You'd love to be a mammal, highly evolved, but there's room for all of us as we go through. We're still going to take some of the traditions with us. So I don't know if that makes any sense. Maybe as a drummer, it makes total sense to me, but we are going to be moving into a new epic, a new era. And it was triggered by a pandemic. It could have been triggered by anything, right? This stuff had been building for a long time. The virus didn't cause any of these tectonic changes. It just set it in motion. Sure. So they'd been building for a long time. The internet changed everything. Our expectation of how we do our work, how we teach music, how we play music, what type of music is valued, all that's been changed and changing, but the virus just accelerated it and kicked it in. And that's how epics change, right? They change very slowly, and then all at once. And that's what we're going through right now. And the trickiest part of this is we're not through with it yet. We actually don't know what the other side looks like. We're trying to figure it out. We're trying to estimate and anticipate and speculate what the world will look like post-COVID, but we really don't know yet. And so if you're in the classroom right now, boy, if you're in my role right now, we're all still trying to figure out what is it going to look like. And we're taking a whole bunch of shots on goal here. Is it this or is it that? Is it this or that? And that's what happens in this period between epics is there's lots and lots of shots on goal. Some are going to work, some aren't. That's okay. And if you're in the classroom right now, you're trying a whole bunch of stuff, and that's okay. Some is going to work great. Some of it is not going to work great, but you got to keep taking those shots.
Yeah, such an important thing for folks to remember because it can be frustrating in all of our roles.
Yeah.
Because it is new and different. One other point I want to touch on before we finish up today, another big change happening is that you will be leaving NAMM here in a year or so. 120-year-old association has had 3 folks in your role. So that speaks a lot to NAMM and the welcoming and wonderful environment that it is and the passion. But it speaks to folks like you and Larry Lincoln before you. I don't know what NAMM's going to be like without Joe Lamond. I don't know NAMM without Joe Lamond.
It's going to be just fine. Let someone else take a crack. There's been 3 since World War II. There's been 3 people in my role, and Larry Lincoln was my predecessor and Bill Guard before him. You could look at it as a life sentence. Or you could look at it as steady, reliable, predictable leadership. And I think that's what, we're going to have going forward as well. In 2020, actually, at that show, I had made it my intentions known that it was time to move on. And in many ways, I felt it was time for new leadership because I felt those changes coming instinctively. I had no idea what was coming 6 weeks later, by the way. And that took everything and set it aside. Like I said, we made a commitment, the leadership, to say we'll stay together and we're going to see this through to the other side. But yeah, I think inherently felt this change was coming, and it was time for a change in leadership, someone else to take it further than I could. I really felt that. I don't know why or how, but and so someone that comes along and leads NAMM next will be someone who is the post-pandemic vision, or has the post-pandemic vision of how all this can work, and I guess I'll be like Frodo at the end of Lord of the Rings. I'll just kind of go off on a boat somewhere, having, taken it as far as I can. It's time for new leadership. But, I still want to stay involved. I still will be involved in the NAMM Foundation, which is really my true passion, has always been working with education, working with, great new programs, seed funding new programs that can kind of chart the course for more kids to be involved. My life's work has been summed up, and this is kind of the business side, but, drummers think in terms of really simple beats, and I don't mean to, disparage any drummers, but that's our role, is to kind of set the tone and set the rhythm, and everybody can move to that rhythm. And I've kind of gotten this boiled down to 4 letters, whereas my life's work is 4 letters. And you think about, education and different styles of education, and, programs to get kids in, programs to keep them in as they go from, junior high to high school. All that to me got boiled down to 4 letters or 4 words: more to start, fewer to quit. We want more kids to start playing music, and we want fewer of them to drop out. So after my role here at NAMM, I will be totally dedicated to the MSFQ, more to start, fewer to quit, through the NAMM Foundation.
Fantastic. And yeah, the NAMM Foundation, again, if folks haven't checked that out, nammfoundation.org, so many wonderful free resources there, and information on grantees, lots of stuff there. Joe, thank you for taking some time to chat with us today. We will remind folks again, namm.org or believeinmusic.tv are the places to find information about Believe in Music, which happens the end of next week.
Yep. In June, I'd love to see more of your members come out to California and be with us in June. We offer a really great education program for them, activities that are designed just for them to mix with, educators from around the country, increasingly around the world. And of course, the fun of the NAMM show. It's, a tremendously large gathering of the tribes, live music, exhibits, education, and a lot of networking, just a lot of fun in Southern California, Disneyland across the street. So
that's right.
Love to see more of your members come out and be part of this collaboration. We love you guys, and just wish you all the greatest success as we together chart this course where we're at now.
All right, Joe, thank you. I will be there in Anaheim. I look forward to seeing you in a few months, and we'll see you. Finally. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And we will see you online at Believe in Music next week. Joe, thanks again for taking the time to talk to us.
My pleasure, Mark.
And thanks to all of you for joining us on PMEA's Take Note podcast, presented by the Slippery Rock University Music Department. We'll see you next time.